Imagine standing on a beach on the northeast coast of Africa. The water is deep blue and warm. Across an 18-mile strait, you can see the mountains of Yemen. To your left, cargo ships and oil tankers stretch to the horizon. Behind you is something stranger. An American fighter jet parked beside a Chinese warship. French legionnaires jogging past a Japanese surveillance plane. Drones on one tarmac, Italian helicopters on another. You are in a country most people could not find on a map, and yet 6 of the world's most powerful militaries have decided they cannot live without it. This is Djibouti. To understand Djibouti, you first have to understand maritime choke points, narrow stretches of water where geography forces all shipping into a single corridor. The Strait of Malacca, the Strait of Hormuz, the Panama Canal. Whoever sits beside them holds a kind of power no amount of money can buy, because ships literally have no other way through. The Bab el-Mandeb is one of those choke points. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean. If you want to sail a ship from the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal toward India, China, or East Africa, or vice versa, you must pass through this 18-mile gap. Sailing around the southern tip of Africa instead adds 3,000 nautical miles, 2 weeks, and millions of dollars in fuel. Roughly 10 to 12% of all global maritime trade transits this strait every year. Now look at a map. On one side is Yemen, fractured by civil war, its coastline partly controlled by Houthi forces who have shown that even an unsophisticated armed group can disrupt world shipping with drones. On the other side is Eritrea, a closed authoritarian state with little interest in serving as a cooperative hub. Sandwiched between them, at the exact southern lip of the strait, is a small crescent of land. That land is Djibouti. Djibouti is roughly the size of Wales. Its population is about 1.2 million people. Its nominal GDP is roughly $5 billion a year less than the revenue of a single mid-sized American hospital. Much of the country is desert, with almost no arable land, no oil, no significant mineral wealth, and virtually no manufacturing. It is hot, dry, and harsh. And yet, it has something more valuable than all of those combined: location. France realized this early. After the Suez Canal opened in 1869, the Red Sea suddenly became the most important shortcut on the planet, and France seized the coastal town of Obock in 1862 as a coaling station to counter British-controlled Aden across the strait. The colony, then called French Somaliland, stayed French until independence in 1977. Djibouti's first president, Hassan Gould Abtedon, pursued a cautious survival strategy: stay neutral, keep France close as a security guarantor, and avoid being swallowed by larger neighbors Ethiopia, Somalia, or Eritrea. Everything changed in 1999 when Ismail Omar Guelleh, widely known as IOG, took power. Trained in intelligence and security services, Guelleh understood something his predecessor had not. A small country doesn't need natural resources to be powerful. It only needs to control something powerful countries desperately want and cannot get anywhere else. After the attacks of the 11th of September 2001, the United States went looking for a secure base from which to run counter-terrorism operations in the Horn of Africa and Yemen. Djibouti was the obvious choice. In late 2001, the US established Camp Lemonnier on the site of a former French Foreign Legion post beside the international airport. It remains America's only permanent military base on the entire African continent. Around 4,000 US personnel are stationed there today, operating special forces, marine tilt-rotor aircraft, and armed drones flying from a secondary airfield at Shabali. A 30-year lease signed in 2014 pays Djibouti roughly $63 million per year. Then Guelleh did something no other country had done at such scale. He invited everyone else in too. Japan opened its first overseas military base since World War II in Djibouti in 2011 for anti-piracy patrols of Somalia. Italy opened its own base in 2013, and in 2017, China opened its first and still its only confirmed overseas military base just a few miles from Camp Lemonnier. Let that sink in. There is nowhere else on earth where American forces and the People's Liberation Army maintain permanent military facilities within sight of each other, not in the South China Sea, not in the Pacific. The closest thing to a US-China military front line is a patch of sun-baked desert in the Horn of Africa. American generals initially voiced serious concerns about Chinese intelligence operating so close to sensitive drone and special operations missions. US officials even accused the Chinese of aiming lasers at American aircraft near the base. Yet, the day-to-day reality has sometimes been more ordinary. When a garbage dump outside the city caught fire several years ago, American firefighters, Chinese firefighters, and Djiboutian firefighters showed up and fought the blaze side by side. Military rent, though, is just one layer. Goele built Djibouti into a regional logistics hub. The Chinese-financed railway to Addis Ababa, completed in 2018, connects landlocked Ethiopia, a country of over 120 million people, directly to Djibouti's ports. Around 95% of Ethiopia's trade passes through Djiboutian territory. The Dorale container terminal handles the largest ships afloat. There is a third layer almost nobody talks about. Today, at least 12 major international submarine fiber optic cables, including CME V6, CCOM, AAE-1, and Meta's 45,000 km to Africa cable land on Djibouti's shores, carrying an estimated 17 to 20% of the internet traffic transiting the Red Sea. That makes Djibouti one of Africa's most important digital choke points. A single well-executed attack on its cable landing stations could disrupt connectivity across Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, and beyond. Recognizing the danger, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan signed the Horizon Fiber Initiative in February 2026, building a 2,800-kilometer terrestrial backup corridor. If this sounds like a geopolitical masterstroke, in many ways it is. But there is a catch, actually several. First, the stability foreign powers rely on is bound up in one man. Goele, now 78, won a sixth term in April 2026, with officially 97.8% of the vote after Parliament removed the presidential age limit to let him run. Major opposition parties boycotted. Human rights groups described the election as neither free nor competitive. Unemployment is close to 40%, and poverty affects roughly 4 in 10 Djiboutians. No clear successor has emerged. If and when a transition happens, the next leader may not offer the same terms to all current tenants. Second, hosting everyone's military carries direct risk. In March 2026, analysts warned that if the Iran war escalated further, Iranian missiles or proxies could potentially target Camp Lemonnier. A miscalculated strike could just as easily hit the French, Japanese, Italian, or Chinese bases next door, dragging multiple countries into a conflict none of them sought. When the Houthis announced a maritime blockade of Saudi Arabia on the 20th of July 2026, deploying missiles and drones near the el-Mandeb, vessel traffic through the strait fell by 24% in a week, and Djibouti was suddenly not just hosting the forces, protecting shipping, but sitting in the line of fire. Third, there is a version of the resource curse even when the resource is geography. Easy money from base leases and port fees flows directly to the state, reducing the incentive to build a broader, diversified economy. Services account for roughly 80% of GDP, but much of that is logistics and rent. Singapore, the country Djibouti often cites as a model, built its success not just on a port, but on education, governance, and a skilled private sector. Djibouti is still a long way from that. And yet Djibouti's story matters to you more than you might think. The shirt you are wearing, the phone in your pocket, many of the goods that reach you have either transited the Bab el-Mandeb or relied on the military infrastructure that protects that route. The internet traffic carrying this very video may have passed through a cable landing on Djibouti's shore. In an era of great power competition, where every port, every cable, every airstrip is treated as a piece on a global chessboard, Djibouti is one of the few places where all the players have agreed to show up at once. They watch each other, they sometimes glare, they sometimes even fight fires together. But they all stay, because none of them can afford to leave. There is a lesson in that. Some countries are born with oil, some with fertile soil, some with hundreds of millions of people. Djibouti was born with a strip of desert beside a narrow channel. And from that single fact across colonialism, the Cold War, the war on terror, the rise of China, and the digital age, it has built a role out of all proportion to its size. Whether it can turn the rent it collects from the world's powers into lasting prosperity for its own people is the open question. For now, the flags of half a dozen nations fly above the desert. The tankers queue at the strait. The cables hum with data at the bottom of the sea. And the world's smallest strategic superpower keeps renting out pieces of its sand to anyone who will pay. When everyone needs you, you don't need to be big. You just need to be in the right place. If you want more of these hidden geopolitics stories, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments which tiny strategic country I should break down next.